You want to get into the main topic?
Let's do it. So I'm going to say at the outset that I'm going to say the initials repeatedly, not only because this is the way he's referred to in the news, but because I don't want to say Sam Bankman-Fried every time I refer to the guy. SBF. When I say SBF moving forward through this segment, I'm talking about Sam Bankman-Fried, the former and now disgraced former CEO of the crypto exchange FTX, which is the topic of today's main part of the episode. And to give you the real quick and dirty, which you probably know a lot of this because it's been all over every mainstream news source. FTX was a crypto exchange, just like Coinbase or just like Binance. There's a bunch of different options you could use if you want to buy cryptocurrencies. FTX was just one of those that you could buy from. And FTX basically stole its customers' funds in order to gamble illegally with those funds on other cryptos. So before SBF founded FTX, he had another company that he started called Alameda Research. And when he moved over to FTX, he turned that over to his girlfriend, Caroline Ellison, equally as unqualified to run...
Fucking smoke show, though.
Equally as unqualified to run a multi-billion-dollar organization like SBF himself. And I want to say the number was 10 billion when Alameda Research was making these speculative bets on cryptocurrencies. She was basically betting that shit coins were going to go to the moon and losing customers' funds left and right. So SBF said, hey, here's 10 billy. Go try to make your money back. And to the surprise of literally no one, she continued to lose it, and it sunk FTX. And now people
she was the Yoko Ono of FTX.
And now, as David alluded to with Tom Brady at the before the jump in, people like Tom Brady to the tune of several $100 million are now out big with the collapse of FTX. And it's ugly as far as the eye can see.
So not only is this season ugly for Tom Brady on the football field, but it's also ugly for him in the financial field. And I think I just saw that there's a whole...
And in the personal field.
Well, it's not every day you lose your family and an angel at the same time. But again, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but it seems like there's lawsuits coming for certain members of the celebrity that endorse this too. So the fallout from this is just, it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, and it can't not affect everything that's happening in the market right now. But please, Dane, espouse to us why there's more to this story than meets the eye, like Transformers.
Yeah. Well, before we get into some weapons of mass destruction unique, and I say unique in the sense that most platforms are not talking about the angle that we're going to go with it, but this isn't like other people have also had this idea, so I'm not going to claim that I'm the originator of it. But before we get into that, just a couple more details on the surface, because personally, I feel like the way this story is being covered is a way to make people miss the forest for the trees. And it's because the things that everybody are being told to look at of, ooh, look at how outrageous this is. Isn't this outrageous? And yes, of course it is. But there's a lot of red herrings flying around for what could even be the most dangerous and outrageous of all. But before we get there, just a couple of the surface level outrageous things in case you've been under a rock and haven't heard of some of these things. So SBF became one of the youngest billionaires on earth as the CEO of FTX. I think he was worth something like $60 billion or something like that at the ripe old age of 30. And he used his substantial wealth to
run down Main Street naked with taxation as theft written across his chest.
Exactly.
Woo! Callback. Thanks for sticking around. Let's find out more.
SBF, coming from two parents who are professors of law at Stanford University. So he's not exactly, a poor kid from the other side of the tracks that just, made his way up in this world on sheer genius. These parents are also heavily connected with the Democratic Party. I think I saw somewhere his mom actually served as Hillary Clinton's attorney in some capacity. So yes, very connected to the Democratic Party.
Surprised she's not dead yet.
And I know, right? Well, she probably didn't leak.
Give it a couple of moments.
So SBF, and again, a surprise to nobody, in these midterm elections, the one we just talked about, spent $40 million. I would say of his own money, but none of it was his own money. He embezzled it from his customers. But he spent $40 million on Democratic candidates. Now, when he was interviewed, he kept saying that I donate my money in a nonpartisan way, and I'm just searching for the people with the best ideas and the best policies. They just happen to always be Democrats, like 90% of the time. $40 million, which was
when
behind.
You're right.
He was only second to the infamous George Soros in
the
terms
Dark
of
Lord incarnate.
In terms of individual donators to Democratic candidates throughout these midterms.
George Soros.
$40 million.
That sounds like
it's a lot of money.
That's a good Bond name. It's a good Bond villain.
It is.
I feel like he spins around with a white cat that he's petting every time. Like, George, your Amazon package here. Excellent. Send it in immediately.
So that's red herring number one, right? The fact that his family and he himself are heavily connected to the Democratic Party and he used these ill-gotten gains to fund Democratic candidates, that's outrageous. And it is. I agree with you. It is. But it's not the most outrageous thing. Well, what could be more outrageous than that? Well, it could be the fact that before they pulled it down from their website after the collapse ensued, the World Economic Forum was a big FTX supporter. And they wanted you to know that FTX was built for traders by traders, and it was going to revolutionize the way cryptocurrency came into the world. And the World Economic Forum was super, super duper behind it.
Isn't that the same forum that said that we'll have nothing and like it?
Yep.
And it said that we're going to be eating bugs.
Pretty much.
And it said that we're not going to be traveling anywhere, but they'll be traveling everywhere.
That's the one.
Is that we're going to own nothing and love it?
The very same. Okay, that's outrageous.
That's Klaus Schwab.
Yes.
Yes, they will own nothing and like another
another
Bond fraud with Bond villains. Jesus Christ, we've got a script here that we're letting go. We were going to make our own $9 million ourselves, by God.
Now, again, also very disturbing, very outrageous. And yes, if you're mad about that, good, you should be. But I'll even do you one better. I have a quote from Unusual Whales, which is a Twitter watchdog account, they always publish the report of all the congressmen and women that just completely outpace the market with all of their inside information. So Unusual Whales is a Twitter account that's, at least they're on the side of the good guys in the sense that they're giving you more information. And they had this to say about FTX's partnership with, of all places, Ukraine. Quote, by the way, this will be linked at the show notes page as well as in the description under these videos.
Sorry, the irony is still kicking back a little bit.
From Unusual Whales, quote, the countries, talking about Ukraine, the country's collective efforts have already raised some $48 million in Bitcoin, DOT, Ether, Solana, and Tether, and other cryptocurrencies, according to the website. Other estimates place the amount closer to 100 million. But totals vary with market swings and exactly which websites are included. How did Ukraine accomplish this, by the way? Well, in partnership with FTX, don't you see? So you remember when David and I were saying about 5 or 6 months ago when the billions were flowing into Ukraine? And we're like, I know a money laundering scheme when I see it. Turns out we were more exactly correct. And as we know, conspiracy theories just turn out these days to be 6 months ahead of the curve, is that's at least in part exactly what was going on, because those billions, which were flooding into Ukraine, were being used in conjunction with FTX to turn cryptocurrency into real dollars, which then also partially funneled back into the United States to fund Democratic campaigns. This isn't a part of the $40 million that SBF gave himself. This is additional money flowing back into U.S. politics from a foreign country. I distinctly remember being told that that's a bad thing. from U.S. taxpayer dollars initially flowing into that country. Odd how that works, isn't it? That's the exact definition of money laundering.
I don't know anything about finances, Dave. But all I was hearing is that we are helping a sovereign nation stay sovereign from
Fighting for democracy.
right, fighting for democracy. As we all know, thank God, democracy won in this country. The Democrats maintained a healthy population within the Senate. So their people won, therefore democracy won. Anyway, moving on. It would be a bad look if you use the pain, suffering, and struggle of a nation being bombed and war torn to make a killing in a pun intended in a monetary value for yourself and the party that you're affiliated with that espouses moral platitudes nearly constantly. That'd be terrible. That just, it would look really bad for you, right?
The more we talk about this story, the more I think, what if the roles were reversed? What would Mother Jones say if SBF happened to be a Republican supporter and it was Republicans that were pushing for more and more war in Ukraine, and the money being funneled through Ukraine was being funneled back into Republican campaigns? I wonder what Mother Jones would have to say about buying seats.
I can tell you right now. It's what they said for the 4 years before their guy got in. Is a Russian syndicate.
Probably.
Is a Russian Manchurian candidate. Russians have a P-tape on them, obviously, even though probably one of their party members were paying Russia to gather information on the other party. I don't want to get weird here, but all I'm saying is that it's not hard to outwit the witless here in this case.
Yep. You heard it here first from Kamala Harris. But
the passage of time.
Anyway. Now, again, all of that outrageous. Or even maybe this has you the most outraged. The fact that when it all came crashing down and FTX declared bankruptcy, it just so happened magically, and the timing was epic, that FTX was hacked. I hesitate to use scare quotes.
Oh my God, was it Russia again?
It was hacked, and another $1 billion of client funds was stolen.
Shit!
When it was supposed to be locked down tighter than a cannon so that nobody, at least they're not going to lose any more, another $1 billion.
How did these savvy tech geniuses let that shit happen, Dane?
Yeah, how did they let it happen indeed? Now,
did I accidentally let my zipper down?
I think
Should I have XYZ'd?
I know. I think you've done the people a great service by getting us to the point that David and I would like to make for
my
you.
weenie to the public.
Now, as I said at the outset, this is not a WMD podcast unique theory. Call it a conspiracy theory if you'd like.
Give it a couple months.
Exactly. Give it about 6 months based on our
Before
estimates.
you cancel us, hold on YouTube. Before we get our second official strike.
No, I don't think we'll get a strike for this.
Yeah.
Listen, the only thing we've been canceled for and struck on multiple platforms is the C word. This is not that.
Cunt?
Yes. Now, all of that is outrageous, I grant you. However, if you only focus on those things, you are missing the forest for the trees, and here's why. I'm going to make a prediction, and we'll see what happens. I predict that SBF will not face any charges criminally. He's going to be involved in civil suits, and people are going to try to get their money back from him and all of that kind of stuff. Absolutely. That's no question. But SBF will not go to jail, despite the fact that his Ponzi scheme was 10 times the size of Bernie Madoff's. He will not go to jail for one simple reason. He played his part well. Let's let David get his question off, and then I'll tell you exactly what that part was.
Miss Clifton. Anyway, my true Family Guy fans will be happy with that one.
I should have made you wait. You go, and
knock my fucking mug off the desk. Anyway, Dane, I know you're saying all this thing about SBF, which it's weird for me, by the way, because I've got a secret best friend. So I'm hearing like my secret best friend did all this bullshit. Anyway, not important. We're moving on. Where did he headquarter his corporation? Please.
Apparently, the whole operation, both FTX and Alameda Research, were being run out of, I think it was a mansion in the Bahamas by a bunch of 20 and young 30-something kids
And what
that had
are
no experience doing any of it before.
and what are the Bahamas exactly?
A tax haven. One of many around the world, but yeah.
And even though he's an American citizen, I'm assuming, with both of his parents being American citizens and him being born on, I'm assuming, American soil, why would he set up his corporation in the Bahamas? Are they privy to our law and our jurisdiction to provide said law over that state?
Well, and this gets to the theory is that much less regulatory oversight if you're in the Bahamas.
Huh. And if he were to break a law,
Well, let me rephrase that. Much less official regulatory oversight, SEC, CFTC, things like that.
so if he were to break a federal law in the Bahamas, can we go and pick him up like we could if he broke it in Ohio or in Kansas or in California or in Florida?
That's a good question. I'm sure his lawyers would probably say no for a myriad of reasons. I don't know the specifics on all of that to be able to opine one way or another about whether it could or not. I will say, though, that if there seems to be a global interest, right, there were people from all over the world that were stolen from in the Bahamas as well, that somebody somewhere could charge him criminally with a theft of this size.
One would think.
I mean, people get charged with thefts of much, much, much smaller sizes
Mars.
for all the time. So,
Right. All I'm saying is that it's
what exactly the United States' jurisdictional, rights could have been with
because
respect to it,
all
I
I've
just don't
heard is
know.
extradition. That's all I've heard this week, and that it's very hard to extradite him if he's even there, because we can't seem to find him right now, even though they can track us down to within 1 meter of where we've been over the last couple of hours.
Well, and
with
it
our
sounds
cell
like
phones.
you may be anticipating my theory in a little bit in terms of giving them plausible deniability for why he isn't charged. And for
Sure.
that, I give you kudos.
Thank you. I want to give all the facts. We report. You decide.
That's right. We try to slice it straight down the center as much as possible, and then you decide what you want to believe. But I gave you all of the kind of mainstream headline things that were outrageous about this whole situation. But the more you dig into it, the uglier it gets. The fact that, again, these were 20-something kids with no experience managing billions of dollars. The fact that he loaned $10 billion of customer funds to his girlfriend running another organization that he had previously founded. This girlfriend who, in a public interview, said that things like stop losses weren't effective risk mitigation measures. This girl was managing at least $10 billion. That's how much she got from FTX. I don't know how much she lost before that, but was managing at least $10 billion at the time that she made that kind of a statement. And if you have even sniffed anywhere near any sort of markets or anything, you know that stop losses are like on the first page of risk mitigation strategies that you should probably familiarize yourself with and use at least a little bit so you don't lose everything, including your shirt. Speaking of losing your shirt, a lot of these kids, I may have been all of them, at this Bahamas compound were all sleeping with each other. Polyamorous. They were really sexually.
Pause.
This is true.
Pause.
Though. I'm not making this up.
And I know what you're thinking.
They've admitted it.
I know what you're thinking. Sounds super fucking hot. I get it. I get it. But if you see one picture of any one of these 10 members, you would immediately abort it on Pornhub. There's no way that you would want to see any of these people doing any of the weird shit that they try to experiment with each other's bodies at any given point. There's no smoke shows. I know I said it earlier. Do not look it up on YouTube or excuse me, YouPorn, Pornhub, wherever you see fit. It's like looking up a lemon party. You don't want to see this. There's nothing that's happening here that's fit for human consumption.
Now,
these people should be under bridges asking 3 questions to all passersby. That's all I'm saying, Dane. Please continue.
For purposes of my theory and to quit hiding the ball on you any longer.
Like they did, I'm sure, in the compound.
It's a rather important detail that SBF was a bit of an outlier within the global crypto space in the sense that he was always pushing very hard for and advocating for regulation of cryptocurrency. That's why the World Economic Forum supported him. That's why Ukraine teamed up with him. That's why he donated heavily to politicians. Again, 90% of the time, they just happened to be blue. But he donated to politicians that were in that sphere of pushing for more and more crypto regulation. And you're probably asking yourself, why would a guy who wanted to use his platform and one of the largest crypto exchanges on the planet, why would he want to use all of that influence for regulation when, as David suggests, he would move to the Bahamas, at least for the ostensible purpose of evading regulation? And what I'm going to suggest to you is that not only that contradiction, but the size and scope of the malfeasance here is so massive and so blatant that it can't possibly be by accident or just by, dumb kids doing things the wrong way and getting away with it for too long. What I think is that all of those things that you're told to be outraged by and that you should be outraged by is going to make you miss the point that what SBF was there to do, what his political masters that he ended up donating to, what they put him there to do was to intentionally create the largest clusterfuck he possibly could, because what would give would-be regulators more ammo than using this as the poster child and saying, see, that's why we have to regulate crypto. And we don't just need to regulate crypto here on the United States soil. We need to regulate it globally. We probably need to centralize it. We need to centralize it in the form of this thing we've been talking about for the last couple of years, CBDCs, central banking digital currencies. Things where instead of getting little green dollars that you can at least hide from the government here and there when you transact with those, no, we're going to give everybody a number and they're going to have an account that we, the government, have access to. You say something we don't like politically, we hit the button and your account is zapped. You say something we don't like politically, you can't go down to Publix and get your groceries. We say something you don't like politically, your account can no longer pay for your electricity to stay on at your house. That is the dystopian future that a centrally controlled, government-regulated cryptocurrency is, and that's why so many in the crypto space are adamantly against regulation and centralization. But if SBF, with all of his political ties, could bamboozle people all over the world to the tune of billions of dollars and do it in such a grotesque and in-your-face way, then when a politician gets up in Congress and says, that's why we need crypto regulation, who's going to argue with them? Just crazy out there fringe decentralization at all costs cryptocurrency proponents. Nobody who's sane or rational would want it to be deregulated, because look what SBF did. He played his part. He did exactly what they put him there to do. And that's why you'll never see him criminally punished for any of this.
I don't want to go a bridge too far. But if
Which usually means that he's going to go a bridge too far.
But as we all know, the conjunction but means disregard everything I just said before this word. 9/11. Have I gone too far?
I think, yeah.
Have I gone too far?
Whatever. We're there.
Again,
Explain Tower 7.
Then why Tower 7? They're turning the fucking frogs gay. Anyway, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it was an inside job necessarily. But it's that whole never let a tragedy go to waste. And let's just give the benefit of the doubt, as we did on 9/11, to this exact scenario that's playing out. And let's just say that this was a clusterfuck of a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds that were just spreading diseases with each other and smells that we don't need to ever think about. And then going to work and then doing the same thing with a bunch of money that was given to him by a bunch of very powerful people. If the government ever steps in and says we can stop this from happening again, that's when you know that there's probably fingerprints all over whatever the fuck just happened. Or at least they knew about it before it happened and let it happen so that they can interject themselves, because God knows the government doesn't like to see any free market without its own regulations upon it to elicit anything on it. It doesn't like to see things that it can't control. And that's where we're at right now. So that, if you don't take anything else away from this, and I'm going to let Dane have the final word here, just the thing that should raise your red flag is the fact that, and again, we're predicting the future here, as we do so often on Weapons of Meme Destruction. Bet fucking your bottom dollar that within the next 2 months, there's going to be legislation put to the floor of Congress that says we need to start regulating fiat currencies. We need to start regulating Bitcoin, Dogecoin, everything that's in that market. We need to start seeing government oversight within that, which then disintegrates everything that those currencies stood for. And Dane, I'll leave you with the final word.
Well, whether you think I'm out there, or whether you think that I'm a conspiracy theorist, or whether you think that, this is all just crazy Alex Jones territory stuff, I would ask you this: whether it is a conspiracy or whether it's not, and it's just some dumb kid who somehow magically got away with it and on the size and scale that he did for as long as he did, with all of the little details that were like, how is this not a red flag, to very sophisticated investors that gave him a ton of money and ended up losing it all, is what I would say to you is, whether my conspiracy theory is correct or it's not, how would you be able to tell the difference from the perspective of somebody who, before any of this happened, already wanted to usher in central banking digital currencies, or already wanted to usher in regulation and stuff like that? You can't tell the difference, because this is a wet dream for them. Now, you can say it's just a coincidence that, Congressman or woman X that wants crypto regulation to the nth degree just got super lucky, and they got the perfect test case painted as beautiful as a Monet for them to say, look at that. That's why I've been right this whole time, and we just need to shut the whole thing down. Maybe just serendipity was shining upon them, and this perfect situation, as ugly and grotesque as it is, fell right into their laps. It's possible. Coincidences are a real thing. I would posit to say the coincidences within the context of government are much more exceedingly rare than in the real world, but I'll give it to you. Could be an absolute coincidence. But again, this is why predicting the future is both hard, but also lends credibility. Because if he is not prosecuted for a Ponzi scheme, again, I cannot stress this enough, 10 times the size of Bernie Madoff's. Bernie Madoff went to jail for the rest of his life. A powerful, well-connected Wall Street guru, even he went to jail for a long time. You gonna tell me this 30-something-year-old kid who pulled off 10 times what Bernie Madoff did isn't gonna face any criminal charges. If he does, I'll eat crow. If he doesn't, well, keep subscribing, and sharing weapons of mass destruction for more news, tomorrow's news today.